Well, hello and welcome once more into the Map Room, a podcast where we try and look at the world through the lens of the agency owners that we represent and bring items and stories to the table that we think will bring value to their business. Today, I want to talk about something that, whether we try to ignore it or we try not to ignore it, we just can't. And that is this word AI, artificial intelligence. I really want to have a conversation around what's the reality behind it. If you're an agency owner, what's the myths? Where potentially are the threats to your business? But at the same time, every break in technology brings opportunities. So I want to be able to discuss that. We always said when we started this podcast that we didn't like theorists. And I know that I could probably get many, many guests for this session today, which would be able to wax lyrical about AI from a consultative point of view and have probably never really delivered it or understood it. So I'm delighted to say that our subject matter experts today with us are a long-standing map client, and that is Dootrix. So that's Rob and Kev. Welcome to the Map Room. Thanks for giving your time up. And I'm really looking forward to your expertise in this manner today.
Thanks, Stuart. Yeah, it should be fun. Good chat.
So let's maybe rewind for a little bit and start at the basics. So I know that when I'm going back probably now a few years when you guys started to talk about AI and where you were going on this journey, that I often had a view that at that point, there was no such thing as AI. There was only machine learning. And I'm talking about my extensive use of AI at that point would have been the Ryanair bot. So you get where I'm coming from. So what I would call machine learning. And we've come through that. And maybe now I think what I'm seeing from a non-technical perspective is the adoption into now generative AI. And whether that's good or bad, and we can talk about things like Grok and the legal cases. So another MP start legal proceedings against Grok for the creation and use of deep fake imagery. The generative AI at that point is, I suppose, the first thing that starts to bring, shall we say, threat to some of our agency clients. And we talk about content creation. So I'm interested in your view of where AI's come from, where we are today, and then maybe what the next steps are.
Wow.
Go.
I think, well, let's start with that assumption that the AI wasn't a thing and machine learning was the thing. So I think that's probably not quite fair. So roll back the clock many years, and there were two competing models for delivering software. There's the model that everybody knows and we all grew up with, where you write machine instructions into the computer using a language, it gets compiled, and Bob's your uncle, there's your software program. There was always a competing version of that, which is we're going to try and model the human brain or model some kind of machine that can learn. And we're going to train that thing based on its sort of self-correction and the way that it learns and ingests that information. It can model the output that we want. So I guess that was referred to as machine learning in the early days, because it sort of started with this sort of fascination with the brain and what became known as neural networks. So you always had kind of machine learning and neural networks, and then you had kind of deterministic software. And really what's happened very recently is that machine learning side with the neural networks, and then the deep neural networks, and then the recurrent neural networks, and then the large language models, what we've got today, it's just a bunch of technologies that are built on top of each other and on top of each other on top of each other. And then there was a breakthrough by Google actually in this space about something called attention, which allowed large language models to appear as the magic that they did when they burst into the scene in 2022, I think it was.
When you say the sort of software model that we grew up with, you have to remember that I grew up with an abacus. So I didn't grow up with software, gents. So looking at it from the outside in and looking at it from conversation with lots of our clients, the perception of threat is the lack of understanding and the fear of where we are. And you've spoken there about some very logical, shall we say, developmental steps in this.
Right.
But this seems to be over such a truncated time. If we talk about what was the kind of software model before, and yes, back in my agency days, was it Python, was it Java, what? And that seemed to be the only change, the sort of technology stack per se. But we're talking now about very different methodologies of doing something. And I think that's where people are scared of this, or just, burying their head in the sand, because the pace of change in this just seems to be faster than any other thing I've seen in technology for a long time. Is that a fair point?
Yeah, I think it's been developing for a very long time, probably as long as computers have been around. This concept has been here, and that method of training machines has been here. But with that kind of technology stacking on technology on stacking on technology, it's kind of reached this escape velocity. And when Gen AI came on the scene, when ChatGPT broke, that was a real kind of breakthrough moment. But actually, ever since then, it's been accelerating
Yeah.
at a phenomenal pace. And there's so many reasons for that. Number one, huge amounts of money now pouring into the space, billions and billions, maybe trillions invested. It's because it's interesting and it's an exciting thing. There are more people pouring in from a kind of research perspective, more PhDs, more people kind of trying to push the field forward. And then you've also got the fact that these AI models are now really good at writing code. So the AI models are starting to train the AI models, and the code is starting to write the code. So you have seen this kind of exponential ramp up, and it doesn't look like it's sort of slowing down anytime soon.
What I find really interesting in this point of pace of change, and I absolutely now understand the logic you're saying there to me, Kev, which is this has been around in sort of academia and clever minds for a while, but we've now got almost the robots doing the work. So we've got the machines actually doing the work, and therefore the pace of change is the significant driver. And I also think, and go back to your point about the investment coming in, this to me appears to be bigger than when I was around, when people were just talking about the use of internet and just talking about the internet may or may not change the way your office even works, believe it or not. But this seems to be bigger to me. And the bit that I want to either understand or get our listeners to understand is that I see lots of people sitting on this station and waiting and saying, well, we're not really sure where it is. We don't know what we need to do. And I'm talking now about maybe the agency. We don't know what we need to address. We don't know how this will change our business. And we've got lots of instances where the end users, our clients' clients, are sitting there hesitating. So there's lots of people who have been in a traditional, let's say, design and build scenario. So they've been building websites. They've gone from websites to apps, maybe mobile native, etc. And now they all know that this thing's here, but they seem to be sitting back and looking at, well, I'll see what it looks like in a year's time. I'll see what it looks like in 6 months' time. And my impression and my experience from when I saw this in the early days of even just local area networks is, a year's a long time and something's really going to change. So my interest is this something that if I'm an agency owner today, I can sit back and wait and see where it settles? Or by the time I'm going to try and get on that train, have I missed it?
I think I would put it this way. I think it's really important that if you're an established business or established organization, established entity, that you go on the journey. When a change of this magnitude hits, it's not ready for production on day one. You're there when you see it birthed in its infancy, and you see the excitement, and you see the hype, and you see the magic that's promised by the big vendors. You can see the promise, but you can't just do it. It doesn't, either just doesn't work yet, or your team are not equipped to do it yet. The training's not there yet. The knowledge is not there yet. But you can guarantee if you just sit and do nothing for the next year, say, however long it's going to take, someone new will come from nowhere and start from ground zero with all of the knowledge and all of the impact and all of the opportunity and none of the legacy and none of the baggage.
Yeah.
So you have to go on that transition. You have to start transforming your operation today. You have to go on that transition. Otherwise, you will be left behind, not overnight, but you'll wake up one day and realize all these new people have turned up and they're starting to eat your lunch. And then you have to catch up. Then you have to transition.
Yeah.
And by which point, then it will be far too late and you'll be playing catch up. Yeah.
I mean, that's a cautionary tale that's, we can show lots of evidence to that, Rob. I've been involved in various areas of technology for the last, essentially 40 years. And that's always been the case. I say to people now, people often get obsessed about comparisons, and in the space we represent, there's lots of organizations that do benchmarks, etc. And I say to everybody, I believe the biggest risk to your business and the biggest competitor to your business and to your ambition does not even exist today. There'll be lots of agency owners out there and looking at, I mentioned Grok earlier, looking at to say, well, hang on a minute, we're a graphic creative content creator and this is eating our lunch. My view is that's only the starters. That is literally the entrees, and it's going to get worse. And I just think that whenever I've seen it over a period of time, the people who come to dominate are names that were not even around that table at the outset. And I agree with you totally there, Rob. And my point again, which is where that's happened, the speed of that startup to domination seems to be every 5 to 10 years is getting faster and faster and faster.
You can't wait. You can't wait to be ready. You can't wait for it to be ready, because you need to be ready when it's ready. And the only way for you to get ready is to get on the journey now. You have to figure out what it means for you now. And that's going to involve experimenting, making mistakes, doing the wrong thing, playing with technology that will be dead in 6 months. That is the learning curve that we're all going to be on, so that when it's ready and your clients are ready and the world is ready, you're ready as well to deliver it.
Well, I think it's mad not to. And I was watching a video actually before we started this. A Gen Z woman had just got this job, and she started in this organization, and she was having a chat with some of her older peers, and they were kind of pulling their hair out, going, "Oh, I'm going to have to work the weekend now to get all this work done." And she's like, "Well, I don't understand, because I don't think there's that much work to do. It's like, maybe you could show me and I'll give you a hand. I've got some time." And they came to her desk with pages of printed out numbers from a spreadsheet, and they were going to go through them by hand and go through some long-winded process to reconcile these numbers. And she was like, "But why? Okay, you can do this using Excel with a formula." And I'll show you how. So she went to the desk, and then she said, "Right, so if you just fire up Excel," and they're like, "Well, where's that?" So, okay, so right, if you go over here and get Excel, and then if you just if you just press the backspace key, it's like, where's the backspace key? And she's like, "Well, how are these people getting any work done? Honestly, this takes me 10 minutes, and they're going to spend their entire weekend doing that." Now, that's a story that we can all kind of resonate with, because it's Excel versus pen and paper. But this is the same, if not greater, level of acceleration. And if you're not aware of what that can do right now, because it can do a phenomenal amount of stuff right now to make your job quicker or easier or more streamlined and more automated, then you're getting further and further behind, and you're putting in a lot of effort and wasting your own time when you probably don't need to.
I absolutely resonate with that, and I've seen that happen. But I suppose this comes back, doesn't it, to we've got another guest coming on soon into the map room talking about inertia and what drives inertia in businesses. And this is one example, isn't it, of people look at something and it's the ability for someone to sit and learn something new. And it took time to do it. But it seems to be now that, again, as I say, that pace of change is at such a rate, the window of opportunity to learn it is shrinking. So if you don't act now and act faster than you have done in the past, you're going to be further behind. And that's the thing that I'd like to come back to, the idea of when you're saying try something now, the concept of experimentation is, a fear for lots of agency owners. So lots of agency owners, their credibility exists in their craft. You've heard me say before, and I've said on this podcast before, that many of the map clients exist because it was a vehicle to build a craft, whether they were software engineers in your case, whether they were graphic designers somewhere else. And so as they've done that, their credibility, even their identity, comes down to that, their skill and what they do. And what we're asking people now to do is to do something. And we've heard many people talk about it: fail fast, fail forward, experimentation. But it's okay us saying that. It's that person having the faith and the trust to do it, and worry that where does that leave them with their clients. But I think the message that I can see, and I can see across some of the map estate, is that those clients who are having those open conversations with their clients about experimentation, and even using this as an opportunity to talk about experimentation with the end user, are gaining that advantage. We used to live in a world, didn't we, where beta versions were around for so long. This isn't the case now, but it is about having the confidence to do it. So I'd like to go back to something Rob said earlier, which was, what's an example of a sensible step someone can take? So when you say make a step on this journey, what's a sensible start for someone?
It's a good question, I think, as well, because there are two ends to it as well. One end, you've got the fear, I suppose, that because you're known for your craft and you're not sure quite how to use these new tools or processes or whatever, that you won't be able to deliver the product that's being purchased from you in the same way to the same quality. So you don't have the confidence in tooling anymore. So you're afraid of that, and that's going to hold back the experiment. But equally, if the experiment's successful, the nature of this technology brings kind of an existential fear about, where is my value in the first place? So because it changes the nature of kind of how and what you deliver and where your value is as a contributor is. So you're being pushed back on two ends. Do you trust the process? Do you trust the technology? And do you want the outcome? because your value is wrapped up in this whole thing that potentially AI is taking away. So I understand entirely why there is a reticence and an inertia around wanting to get involved and to move this forward. And we've certainly seen that a lot in the early days of our journey with this. I mean, we've been on this journey now for 2 and a bit years, I suppose, from when we decided we've got to go all in this technology and see what it means for our business. But we've gone on that journey with not only ourselves but with our team as well, through the existential fear, through the, what does it mean for me and my career? What does it mean to my value? What is my craft anymore? What is my value to the client? All of that stuff is kind of a natural process that you kind of have to go through. So I guess that's a really long way of saying that it's completely valid and completely validated to feel that and to not want to engage in this change, which at this stage I think feels inevitable.
But I know, speaking to other agency owners, Rob, that absolute question of where does my value go in this, and how do I add value to my client going forward? But if you put your head in the sand, there's going to come a time where that client's going to make that decision for you, whether you make it or not, because the market will have changed, and all your history, your credibility, your legacy will stand for nothing if you are not, that phrase used earlier, if you're not ready when your client's ready, then I'm sorry, but you're going to die, in my opinion. That might.
But I also think that people need to own and understand their expertise more. It's tempting to think that, people could just do this for themselves now, or they can prompt their way to my level of understanding or my 20 years of experience. And it's just not true. And history kind of teaches the same lesson. We had some guy gave us a talk. He works for us. He gave us a talk last week, and he used to be a pilot. And he said, "Do you know that planes have been able to auto land on autopilot for decades? And if you wanted to, you could vibe land an aeroplane. Air traffic control could talk you through how to land an aeroplane in perfect conditions." And then he said, "But today, landing a plane remains one of the hardest aspects of flying an aeroplane, and there need to be 2 pilots present during a landing at all times." And this is decades later. So it did not replace that experience. It still has not replaced that experience, because there's so much more in landing a plane and in flying a plane than just doing it in perfect conditions. And I think that's, I see this in our side of the business from kind of developers and architects, like, well, I don't need to write the code anymore. It's like, writing the code was never your job, really. That was just the thing you needed to do. As one of the outputs you needed to produce to get the thing done, but actually figuring out how to deconstruct the problem, and how to assemble the right solution, and how to make sure that solution could be used day in and day out without falling over, and could handle this kind of security incident or this kind of scale problem, it is what your job really is. That's where your value comes from. Your value doesn't come from punching letters onto a keyboard or into a screen. So I think there is an aspect where we just need to be a bit more confident in our own experience and abilities.
Let's move on to, so part of helping people understand, and I appreciate, the reason I wanted you guys in today is I know where you've started from this, and obviously you've come from a high level software engineering background, and where you are now on your journey. Help us understand what's next. So we've spoke so far about what most people at my level of understanding know of what AI was, and as a user experience, we interact with bots, we interact with more things. Chat GPT's come along, but that idea of punching a question into something and getting some work back, and then instead of just the old Google search, instead of getting 20 questions back, you can go and almost interrogate those questions and do things. And Paul's a big fan of using Chat GPT to sort of get outputs, get work. And I get that, and it's fine. It's not my primary interest of where this is going and how it's going to affect agency land going forward. My primary interest is the concept of agentic computing. So for anybody listening who doesn't know where we are with that now, if one of you can talk through what agentic computing means and what the reality of that is to somebody who is maybe in a more traditional software business today.
Yeah, okay. I think just take a step back from that to touch on something that you said right at the beginning. We're in this place at the moment where there are two groups of people with two completely different understandings of where AI is, and some people are massively disappointed and disillusioned, and some people are like, "Oh my goodness, this is going to change everything." And it really depends on whether you're still just using ChatGPT as your main interface, which a lot of people still are, or if you've progressed onto one of these other tools like Claude Cowork or OpenAI's Codex, and you're using it to get real labor kind of work done. So it's taking stuff off of your plate and doing it automatically. And in one instance, you're talking to a chatbot, and in the other instance, you're interacting with a system that you might choose to call an agent. And the difference between the two is that an agent operates with a bunch of tools in a loop. So it's not just hit, I'm going to type something in, question, you give me a response. That's very, very kind of linear interaction. An agent is, okay, I'm going to look at what the user is asking me to do. I'm going to look at all the tools in my toolbox, and I'm going to go off maybe for an hour, or maybe for 10 hours, or maybe for 4 hours, and I'm going to work at this problem until I've done it. And so some of those tools allow it to open your browser and navigate to websites, connect to databases and fill stuff in. Some of those tools allow it to search the web or write code or do your accounts. And those tools can be generic, ones that it just kind of has in its toolkit, or they can be specialist tools that developers, people like us, would create. So I think that's the real difference between those two worlds is, you've got chatbot on one side and you've got the agent on the other. Main difference is the agent runs and runs and runs in a loop using tools to solve a problem.
But what you're saying there is now it's about, you use the phrase labor, which I love that. It's about getting that labor. And if we take that from my perspective, if you look at when I chose, and we'll talk about this later, I chose to take developers out of a business, that cost of labor to me was significant. It was the largest labor cost in that agency and one of the most unpredictable. Is that what we're now saying is that you can use AI to go and do things that, as you say, you can go and leave it alone to go and do something. We've moved from what I call the reference library, which is used to be the Google, now the Chat GPT, or well, now even like Gemini is sort of, to me, as my viewer, a mixture of those two now, to what fascinates me with what I understand, and I appreciate I could be wrong here, is for me, agentic is, we're talking about something now that can actually reason and can plan something. And that's fundamentally different to me.
Well, reason and plan something, but over the surface area of things in your life that actually matter. So one of the things in the early days was people like, oh, wouldn't this be great if this could be my virtual PA? And they'd call companies up like us up and say, well, could you create this? And you don't have to create this anymore. It just comes out the box. So if you know what to do, you can hook your environment, your agent, up to all of your tools. So your Google Workspace, calendar, your email, and you can just say, "Oh, I need to go to this meeting next week in Reading. Could you find me a time where both me and my contact can do? And then could you plan the route? Because I don't know whether I want to go by car or rail." And then get back to me with a full itinerary and make sure that's booked into my calendar, and make sure everybody's sort of emailed. And that's a task you can now give to an agent, and it will just go away and do it.
The software layer, the agents, has, well, agency. It's where the word comes from. They are able to make decisions. They can reason. They can choose how to act. Kev used the word a few times there in his description. He talked about the difference between agents and deterministic software. Traditional software, deterministic software, runs on a script. It's really good at it. You give it a set of instructions, it follows them.
And that, to me, comes back to the very basic. I always felt that the phrase AI was almost ahead of its time because, as I say, I was one of the cynics that said, this is not artificial intelligence, this is machine learning. But this now is real artificial intelligence. If something can make those choices and it can reason without the rules, without the code, without the go and use this, and this. What you're saying is that it could go in and go, yeah, I've asked me to look at your calendar, but I can also go and do this. I can also go and do that. Give me an example of maybe applications, and I'm obviously aware that if I say applications to you, gents, you'll be talking about sometimes the actual thing that you produce, but I'm talking about the application or the uses. So the PA one's a fascinating one there, isn't it? So anybody that has been in that time where you ask people to go and book your tickets, book your hotel, I get all that. But talk me through some of the other areas that you're seeing. So where are people using this ability to reason and plan? So the use of agents, and help me understand, and our listeners understand, the difference between an agent and agents. Where do I need to have one? In my day, we used to call it spinning an instance up. Where do I need to have more than one artificial brain working on a problem?
Right now, the simplest way to answer that question is to say you probably don't need more than one artificial brain working on a conversation, on a problem. I think when the industry was a bit younger, and you only have to go back a couple of years, everyone, including ourselves, were talking about multi-agent systems, and I think they still are going to play a big part in our future. They're starting to materialize now, actually, through sub-agents predominantly, but the reality's worked out slightly differently. So we've ended up with these massive brains in the cloud that we are pulling down, and we've got an interface to them on our machine, and we can start building these things around that massive brain. So you essentially got one agent, if you like, that can start doing all these different things. So multi-agent systems are definitely going to come, and there's going to be a point where your agent is talking to, I don't know, Booking.com's agent, and then they're negotiating on your behalf. But I don't think we're there yet. Where we are at the moment is very much in this kind of uni-agent world for most people. And so in terms of the tasks that they can do, I mean, I mentioned the virtual PA one, which is a kind of use case I think everyone can resonate with. The other obvious one that has rocked our industry is coding. So software developers would have to look at a problem, they'd have to break it down, they'd have to come up with a plan about how they might implement this thing. They'd need to understand loads of different frameworks and libraries and what they could pull in to use it, and that would be hard won through months or years of usage and research. They'd have to solve the problem, then they'd have to go away and have to code up all the individual modules, and they'd have to go away and they'd have to write tests for all of those things. It's a very long process, so it could take months and months and months to produce an application. And today you can create a very naive application in 5 minutes. And as a developer looking at that for the first time and watching an agent do this, you just think it's all over, because you're seeing something that would have taken 3 months of your time be done in 5 minutes. And that's so we've been living that world for the last kind of 2 years, because it was easy for the Silicon Valley guys to look at their own industry first. But the exact same lessons that have been born out of that are now starting to apply themselves to other areas of work too. If you're in legal and your job is to look through lots of old legal documents or even a current legal document and pull out problematic terms, flag them for review, that kind of thing. And that's now all very easily automated because you're not just scanning for keywords anymore. You've actually got a brain of sorts that's intelligent enough to probably understand if there's some ambiguity here that needs to be resolved. And that's something a machine couldn't have done before. It wouldn't have had a say on whether something was ambiguous or not.
Fascinating. Probably talk about it later, but I was actually talking to someone who's retired out of the legal profession, and we're having this debate about trying accepting the truth somewhere in the middle. But the headlines are saying Alan Milburn's work saying that the ability for school leavers and young people to get into work and entry level jobs is going. And actually, this guy had the other view, particularly in legal, that said we know that AI is going to reduce these paralegal, these entry level jobs, but none of us know how to do it now. So actually, there's a massive opportunity for a bit of time for these youngsters who are far more digital savvy than all these partners in the legal firms to sit there and go, I can help you do that. A little bit like your story with the video, Kevin, of the girl said, let me show you these Excel formulae. So actually, there is it's an aside to this discussion, but there's a view at the minute that actually this big fear of AI taking your jobs, AI is going to create opportunities that dinosaurs like me can't act on, which is fascinating. I want to go back to what you said there about labour and about the ability now to reason and do things. So I think this is the biggest threat, and conversely, the biggest opportunity, depending on how you react to it, for lots of agencies at the minute. So if you are the kind of agency that I had in the past that was a more traditional design and build agency, and that business, so we're very clear, only had build because it was deemed necessary by the client. And we looked at that and said, okay, the biggest expense we have is our developer base. So for those people out there now that says, well, hang on a minute, do you need to first of all employ all these developers, or can you find either technology, or we can talk in a moment about opportunities to partner with people that brings this capability in-house? There's two ways of looking at it. And mission your view on it is there's the opportunity of the existing agency to go, do you have to maintain this level of operating cost? Can you do it more effectively, efficiently? There's another point we said about the competition to the pure designers that have been there that say, I do all this, let's just do very basic old fashioned. I do all this web design, I do all this UX, but I don't code anything. Their ability now to go, I can actually now dip my toe into the water of this coding and development space without having to hire 90 grand a year developers. That's, I see we're at that real crossroads at the minute, and I'd be interested with your views on that.
Yeah, I think obviously we've been wrestling with this for a while now. We've seen this transition come down the pipe for us over the past 2 years or so. I think for us, really the core impact of AI on our business has not been so much what we do for our clients yet. We've done a little bit of AI. We've delivered some basic agentic systems and the occasional AI feature, but that's not really where the transformation is for us. It's really in the processes, the tooling, and the team structures that are now in place and have to be in place to be able to deliver at pace, increasing pace into enterprise environments, high trust environments, while increasing the time to value for the client. So those things have changed. The makeup of the team has changed. It will change. The roles that are required to deliver the things you've always delivered are changing. Now, we'll come to cost in a second, but I think the headline, job reduction, I think broadly is true, right? It's broadly true. You need now less people to deliver the same amount of work once this plays out. However, there are other roles which are becoming elevated and becoming more prominent depending on the space that you're in. Those roles which deal with humans, deal with people, deal with helping you to kind of extract requirements and understand the business, that kind of level role is becoming more elevated. And you require more of them because you need to be able to build that relationship, build that understanding, and extract that information from your client to be able to deliver for them the value that they need. But the number of people required to deliver those artifacts has reduced and will reduce. Now, you could say, great,
Okay.
well, there's a cost saving there because we're having less people. It's a bit of a hot topic at the moment, particularly if you're heavily embedded in this AI world, because the cost of tokens is going to the moon. The tokens are these little entities that it's the currency of AI, if you will. It's what you spend to get the outputs back from the models, and they've been heavily subsidized by the frontier model companies for a long time now. Your $20 or $100 a month or whatever you're paying for a license is radically less than what they cost, and that is coming home to roost. And the prices are going up and up and up. And there's been a story in the news only this last week, hasn't there? I think, Kev, about Copilot and the cost of GitHub.
Yeah, so Microsoft have it's been called the
Hmm.
Great Rug Pull. I think they've changed their plans, so they're now aligned to the token pricing, and what that means is essentially some of their plans have gone up by 27 times multiple overnight. And there are people now. There's a thread I was looking at just yesterday, actually, complaining that well, now I've burnt through half of my monthly allowance in the first 5 hours of the day since we've moved to this new model. So. And we've been having this conversation with customers recently as well, because we're trying to build in these kind of AI costs. And, if you were talking to us 5 months ago, 6 months ago, it would have been not very much money at all. And now it's getting on for the price of a cheap person. So, and I don't know how long it's going to stay like that. I don't know if we're going to end up using more tokens or less tokens, or the price will come down because hardware gets cheaper. But right now, it's not free. If you want to use agentic computing, and remember I said it's like labor, you're paying them to do tasks that take hours, that costs real money now. And that's as of only very recently. So you will have a lot of
Yeah, so you might be able to deploy a team into a customer, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 engineers to deliver a piece of work, or a program of work, or whatever. Those 4, 5, 6 engineers is now probably 1, 2.5 bodies, people of normally more senior skill level, but there's an associated token cost with that, not free.
To put a number on that, it's starting to emerge now. Uber have been in the news again this week, reporting on it. It's expected that if you're in a job where you're making heavy use of AI, so like software development, then the cost of that AI usage is going to be between sort of 12 and 15% of a person's salary. So it's of a high salary too. So it's pretty significant.
So I suppose that's again maybe a conversation of the day. That's then I suppose the pros and cons of this, isn't it? So we're saying that agentic is the real deal now, in that a machine can reason for itself and make decisions. But the downside of that is that machine is spending your tokens, is what you're telling me.
Yep.
So the machine is running up the meter. So it's a little bit like, just because you've just mentioned Uber, it's like jumping into that cab and the cab deciding, I'm going to try
Very much
58 different routes to
Yep.
get to the station, and I'm going to charge you for each route that I'm trying. So is there a facility at the minute, or does this come back to the rules that you put in? Is there a chance to fix price that? So if you sign in front of a client, can you say, well, look, we can do this experimentation and you're prepared to spend this amount of money on it because we can turn the tokens off at 50 grand?
That's exactly what we're trying to do. So we'd hope so. I think that there are, when you're, live in this world, there are various things that you can do to essentially run a FinOps operation over the top of your AI spend. So, if these model companies, they keep pumping out these better and better models that are, running on ridiculous hardware, and most people don't really know what they're using or not using, so they're just using the biggest brain in the world possible, the one that can, that's trying to cure cancer, and they're saying, could you give me some ideas for what I might have for dinner tonight? So you do not need to route that kind of prompt to the biggest brain in the world, and so if you know what you're doing, you can make sure that that kind of query gets sent to your kind of less intelligent minion models rather than your big daddy brain model.
So again, for real basic, these are the instances it can go to your GP for. Then they might need a referral for a specialist. They might need a
Exactly
referral
that,
for
yeah.
a consultant. That makes a lot of sense to me. Okay, right. So the last sort of question I wanted to ask in terms of where this technology is I'm aware that you guys have a service which is called Harness Engineering. Now, back in the day, in my days in Amsterdam, that would have meant a very different experience for me. So I'm pleased to ask you the question, what is Harness Engineering? And is this AI 4.0? What does it do and what can it deliver?
Before Kev launches into, I'm sure, a very detailed answer to that question, we did actually run an event last week where we spent 45, 50 minutes answering that one question. So we'll get a précis here, but the actual answer is on our website. So feel free to check that out.
Yeah, no, we'll try not to repeat all of that as well. Is it AI 4.0? I think so, yes. I think it's AI growing up, or it's part of AI growing up. I think the best way to think about it is it's not just a thing, it's a process. So you might remember agile software development. That was a thing. Actually, that was a thing when we first started Dootrix, and we ran with it from day one, and we were one of its very early adopters. And people didn't really know what it was at the time, and we spent a long time explaining it. So we've gone full circle now. We believe that harness engineering is the obvious kind of a process and methodology that the software industry will end up adopting.
Is it too simple to say it's the maturation of AI
It's the
and not?
current maturation of AI, yeah, and it's so AI's gone from prompting, type something in, get something back, then it's like, but I can get better results if I make my prompts better. So then this term you might have heard for a while, because everything's just been for a while and then it's gone poof, is prompt engineering. And that was big, and we're all going to get jobs in prompt engineering because it's all about how you split up by roles and actions and goals and all that kind of stuff. And then that disappeared. And then along came context engineering, and that's like, oh, it's not just about prompts anymore. It's like if you can give it this kind of input and this kind of input, and you got your cool transcript here and your thing here, and then it's got all this context to draw on, and then it can give you a better answer. And then we talked about agents, and we talked about the fact that they can use tools. What we didn't talk about is the fact that they can also use these things called skills. And these skills are they're like a workflow prompt that you give them. Like if you can teach an agent how to effectively edit your particular document template, right? And you might say, right, this is my statement of work filling in skill. And now that is canonized. So every time you want an agent to do something in the same way, you can just call that skill. You don't have to give it the same instructions anymore. So you've got all these little bits of stuff. You've got all the context, all the inputs you can give to the agent. You've got all the tools, which is all the things the agent can play with to get stuff done. You've got skills, which are kind of almost like run books. The agent can go back to figure out how to repeatedly do something, and you kind of mash all these things together with other clever sounding things like MCP and CLIs and blah blah blah. You're building a system, a world around the model that you're using, and that world contains all of those things, and we call that world the harness. So this model is now not operating in isolation. It's not operating just with you prompting something. It's operating with the whole world and an environment. And when we say harness engineering, what we mean is we're no longer interested in building just the software. We're interested in building the world that builds the software. We call this thing software factory because it's not really the world, is it? We're building the factory that builds the software.
Yeah. I nearly used the word factory there, which is fascinating. So essentially what you're saying, and this probably might be the most exciting thing or the most frightening thing that any of our listeners will hear, is that is almost an agency. That is a replacement for an agency. An agency was designed to, if I go back to my last agency, we had designers, we had strategists, we had UX people, we had developers, and then we got rid of the developers. We had all that, and all that was to produce what ostensibly might be a change on someone's website. And what you're now saying is the harness, for the language of our listeners, essentially is the agency. It's the capability, it's the factory that takes the input, has the labor, has the knowledge, has the methodologies, has the management systems in to actually take something in and produce a car out of it.
I would nearly go as far as that, but I wouldn't quite go as far as that. If we stick with the factory analogy, you still need people working in that factory. You need someone making sure that the outputs are valid and that it's not producing crap.
Yeah.
You need somebody that goes in and understands where the things are in that factory and manages the shop floor, if you like.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take away everything. It doesn't take away all the skill. I think it does elevate the skill slightly. But if you're an agency owner, you're really good at delegating anyway. That's what you do. But it does mean that there is definitely manual tasks that you're doing at the moment that you don't need to do. You can encode or you can harness. Yes.
Fascinating. Right. I'm always conscious of time on these things. So maybe we call it to a close there, because you've said two things. I want to call out two things then. So if I'm an agency owner today and I'm either let's just say I'm in a product space or I'm in a design space, and I'm not sure where this can help me expand my business, or I'm in the delivery agency and I'm either losing developers or I need to know a different way of doing this. How do I reach out to you guys? How do I find you guys to have a conversation to say, okay, put it absolutely blunt on the table. How much of my lunch a Dootrix going to take, or how much of my lunch a Dootrix going to help me keep for myself? In other words, whether there's partnership opportunities in there, how do people find you? And the second question, you just mentioned a minute ago, Rob, about an activity that you did. I think you said an event or a webinar or something. So if somebody wants to find out more, maybe without opening them up themselves to a partnership conversation, how do they do that?
The easiest way is our website, dootrix.com. And we're both very active on LinkedIn as well. So all the stuff that we do is published there. We do run a podcast, not dissimilar to this one. It's obviously full of chat and cheer and the occasional whimsical joke, called The Next Thing Now, and that comes out every couple of weeks. We run, and off the back of that, we run monthly webinars around one of the hot topics of that. So we call them live podcasts because we're cool. But basically, it's a webinar. And the one we did last week was on harness engineering, and that's now up live on the website as well. So you can find it there.
Right. So again, the beauty of content these days, you don't have to be there. You don't have to be live on the webinar. Somebody can come to Dootrix.com and they can see that and have a look at it. And then if that sparks either a need, because it could be fear, or a desire, it could be exams to have a conversation, they can reach out to you and see how maybe we should partner. And I think for the record, I want to put it out there to people that I had an agency and I sat and said, how can I make this agency more profitable with less people? And it was a different model to what we talk about now, but that's when I first got involved with Dootrix in a partnership perspective. And Dootrix are actually delivering engineering services for my agency. So I can stand on the record, and that's why I wanted these guys in the room. So if you're in that space where I was, then don't waste time reaching out. So I say the same thing every time. I hope it's been useful. Rob, Kev, I really do appreciate your time. You've helped me understand it a little bit better. I hoped collectively we've helped our listeners understand it better. I hope it's been a use of your time. So thank you for both of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Stuart. Yeah, and thank you for your kind words. Thanks for the invite.
And I just think when we started this process, Rob, we said we wanted to have the battle scars, and I know, having worked with you, what you guys have done. And as I say, at the time for our agency, it was the right thing. I think anyone today looking at this, there's a more appropriate partnership now than even maybe we did. That's why I think it matters now, and I want people to investigate it. And I always say to everybody, it's not that it might be right for everybody, but you need to understand it, even if you want to rule it out, because if you put your head in the weeds, this world is changing too fast. So I hope it's been useful. I hope it's been a worthwhile use of your time, and hopefully we'll see you back in the map room soon. Thanks, and bye for now.